rolling here. So Chuck just gave you the sort of welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Ashley Batchelder. I haven't met you all before, either virtually or over email or in person. I'm glad to share a little bit of time here. I'm the interim director of Metro Arts, and I've been in this role since the end of January, so coming up on a year here. And we believe that doing these report back sessions are very important after we finish each grant cycle. We know that we've had increasing interest in our grants with every cycle that's gone the last few years. And we know that as we've gone through a lot of changes in the last few times, we just wanted to practice being as transparent and proactively communicating about as much as we can. So what I've got planned to go through here today is an overview of the policies that sort of structure and guide our two different grant programs, the processes that we build based on those policies, and the outcomes that we have for this grant cycle here. And then we'll have some discussion based on whatever people want to talk about afterward. So, and I'm going to be letting people into the lobby as I see them. Other thing I want to say is that I tend to not look at the chat when I am presenting, but Chuck is going to monitor the chat, and we'll come to any questions or comments once I get to the end of the slides here. So with that, this is kind of what I said. I'll do an overview of our policies, process, and outcomes, and I'm going to walk through each part as shown on the slides here. So with that, I'm going to make this a little smaller. Okay, so first I'm just going to talk about our grant guidelines, which include our operating grants, our Thrive grants, and also our panelists, so how we score the grant applications. Go here. Okay, our general operating grants, many of you are probably familiar with this, but we know that we have people who are just curious and wanting to learn more about our programs that join these calls as well. So our general operating grants are those for arts-focused organizations that are based in Nashville, Davidson County, and do the majority of their work here in Nashville. And we categorize organizations who apply for these grants by their budget size. So we have micro, small, medium, mid-size, and large organizations. On the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about what those words mean. Our applications for arts organizations really ask information about what is the organization's work, about the impact of the work, how the community is involved in the work, how this is, how it really thinks about accessibility and making this work accessible to different communities in Nashville, and about the vision and some strategic direction of the organization. So that's what the application questions are really based on, and collect that information. And when an applicant applies for an operating grant, they do not ask for a specific amount of funding, but the grant size, the grant award amount, is determined based on the budget that is allocated to the category, the size category organization. And so once I get to the end and showing you the outcomes, it'll be a little more clear what I mean by that. And once we receive applications in the operating category, those applicants that score 70 or above according to the scoring rubric are eligible to receive funding. So that is just a big picture overview of our operating grants. And then, like I said, applicants are categorized by size of organization, and we measure that based on the revenues of the organization, based on the organization's tax records. And so you just see on the slide here what those budget categories are. These are budget tiers or categories that we've used the last 3 grant cycles since this structure was put in place. And we can have lots of discussion about whether these are the correct sort of budget sizes, or maybe if we should consider tweaking them a little bit. We can have that conversation today, or we'll have that conversation in the coming months, but these are how we categorize organizations based on size. So that's the big picture overview of our operating grants. On the Thrive side, these are our project grants. So Thrive grants are artist-led, community-based projects, programs, or art-centered initiatives. And there's lots of different folks who are eligible to apply for a Thrive grant. It can be an independent artist, an artist group or collective, or a nonprofit organization. If you are applying as an individual or as a group that does not have nonprofit legal status, you do need to have a fiscal sponsor. This is the second year that we've had this requirement in place, and so it is still new for Metro Arts. So that's who is able to apply and eligible for Thrive grants. And these applications seek information about what is the proposed project, what is the anticipated or planned impact of that project, how is the community involved, and what is the timeline and what is the budget. So unlike an operating grant where the applicant is not requesting a specific amount of funding, Thrive applicants request a specific budget that is planned out and may request up to $15,000 was what the maximum request amount was for this cycle. The way that these applications are scored is that they are scored according to the same rubric for all the Thrive applicants. They are rank ordered, so the highest scoring application to the lowest scoring application, and then we just award funds until we run out of funding. So that is Thrive, big picture overview of Thrive. And then our policies for our community review panels. So these are paid opportunities for community members who live in Nashville, Davidson County, who respond to an open call that Metro puts out seeking engaged community members who have some personal or professional connection, expressed explicit interest or involvement in the arts ecosystem in Nashville, or have other personal professional experiences that align with our program goals and our process and our overall mission and work. And so we really have a very community-driven process for evaluating and scoring both grants, the operating and Thrive. So panelists or community members who apply for this opportunity, they commit to independently reviewing a number of assigned applications to them, using the rubric to apply scores to those applications, and then coming together for an in-day panel. The panel is when the panelists discuss the applications and can make adjustments to the scoring that they did independently. And so, like I said, this is a open application that is available to community members in Nashville, and Metro Arts staff are the ones who select community members to serve as a panelist. So those are our big picture overviews of the grants and the panelist policies. Now I will jump into the process that we use. So I'll just kind of go through the application process, the review process, and then we'll talk about the outcomes after that. So our applications this cycle were open from July 15th to August 15th on the Submittable platform. If you are perhaps new to Metro Arts, anything that we have an application for, whether it's the grant programs, a panelist, a public art call, an internship program, everything is always on Submittable. So you can see at any time of the year what opportunities we have by going to our Submittable application portal. So we collected applications for that 1 month period, and throughout the application period, staff, we did everything that we could reasonably think of to support applicants through daily one-on-one appointment signups, and we did twice a week in-person drop-in sessions so that we could answer questions, sort of be a sounding board for prospective applicants to bounce ideas around or ask questions. And because we as staff are not the ones that score the applications, that's why we're available to give as much sort of assistance on the front end to make sure that people understand the policies and the process and are really being supported to put their best application forward. And so the other thing I'll just say about this is that this application period from July to August is not the typical time that applications are open. And so I'm mainly just saying that, again, if you are new to Metro Arts in our process, don't take away that the application period will always be in the summer. It'll be a bit earlier next year, and I can talk about that at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So after application deadline, it's a firm deadline. So when that became midnight on August 15th, the submittable platform closes. We are done accepting applications and we move on to technical review. So this is when applications are all reviewed to confirm that they meet the eligibility requirements and that the applications are complete and ready to be evaluated by a panel. So in this phase of the process, we are not evaluating the merits of the application, or if we think it's, a great application, or if it's, not a great application. As staff, when we're doing technical review, we are just looking to see that it is complete and eligible. So during this period as well, it's when we are looking for things that can be corrected via administrative fixes. And so some of those things that we make corrections in during this period are, maybe the wrong tax document was uploaded, or maybe a signature was missing on the background check forms, and things that can be addressed through administrative fixes. So anything in the application at this period that is substantive, that would require, opening the application up, is not what is allowable during this technical review process. It's just really looking at administrative fixes that can be done there. So that's the technical review process. So that happened immediately following the application closure. And then these are the numbers that led us to our community panels as the next step. So I'll start with general operating at the top here. We received 106 applications this cycle, and we went through the technical review process that I just described, and we had 13 applications that were denied at this step for not meeting those requirements, and that moved 93 applications on to be reviewed by our panels. On the Thrive side, we received 275 applications. We went through the technical review process, and there were 57 applications that were denied in that step. And that put 218 applications onto the panel process. The thing that I'll say about this is that this is the highest number of applications that Metro Arts has ever received, especially on the Thrive side. On operating, the 106 applications is pretty equal, give or take just one or two numbers of what it has been the last 2 or 3 years, which 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, it was a smaller number, but we've been holding pretty steady at this 105 number. And again, these are arts-specific organizations, and so the criteria is pretty narrow and specific there. Whereas Thrive, being that these are project funding that is accessible and available to a much wider range of artists and artist groups and community groups, we continue year after year to see this number of applications grow. And so last year we had 201 applications. This year we had the 275 applications. So in total this year we had 381 applications combined between these two categories. And so I am just noting that that is the highest number of applications we have received as a department. It just shows the need for more resources for community arts funding in Nashville, and I know that is probably something we all agree on, and we tend to have a lot of conversation about that in these meetings as well. So that's what our numbers looked like when we got to the panel review process. So next I'm going to show the outcomes of the panels, and I'll start with operating. There we go. So this is a distribution of those 93 applications, organizations that were evaluated by the community panel, starting from a perfect score of 100% down to the lowest scores that you see here. And let me click this. I mentioned at the beginning our funding formula. So this is our policy about how we apply rules and procedure for what matters about these scores, right? So our funding formula is that applications that score 70 or higher are eligible for funding. So this is a pass-fail sort of method of evaluation. I call it pass-fail. You see those on the right side of the line are those that are eligible, and we determine the funding amounts for each organization by scaling the available budget to those who are eligible based on that size of organization. So once I get to the outcome slide, you'll see how this breaks down. But we had two different panels that evaluated the operating applications. So that is the distribution on the operating side. And next here, okay. This is the distribution of Thrive. Again, we had a much higher volume of applications here. We had 4 different Thrive panels that are all shown here. I'm just letting someone into the lobby. And for Thrive here, this is based on points, whereas the operating one that I showed was based on the 0 to 100 percentage. So 18 points is the highest score that a Thrive application could receive. And here, as I said at the beginning, applications are scored and then rank ordered, and funds are awarded until we run out of funds. And we ran out of funds at this, the 15-point cutoff was where that happened. So you can see those to the right side of the line are the applications that were accepted and approved for funding, and those on the left side were those that were not. Due to the large volume of Thrive applications, you see that there were more that did not receive funding than those that did receive funding. And again, this is the most applications that we've ever received on the Thrive side. And we did, we made a policy decision to fund accepted projects at the amount that they requested. So the applicants could request up to $15,000 for the project, and if the application asked for $15,000, we provided the $15,000. If it asked for $12,000, the award was $12,000. So unlike operating, we don't scale these down in order to have more awards, because we believe that the integrity of the project budget is important to honor by honoring the budget that was submitted with the project. So that is the results of the panels for both Thrive and operating. So that brings us to our outcomes. Doing a time check. I think I'm doing okay on time. So I'm going to show you the FY26 grants that I just went through, and then I'm just going to end by showing you some trends from our grant policies and outcomes over the last 5 years. So the first sort of decision that we need to make when we get to this point in the process, we have our scores and everything, is how are we allocating funds between the 2 different grant programs, the operating ones and the Thrive ones? And so this shows that decision that we have made the last 4 years. So the green is funding for the operating grants and the yellow is funding for the Thrive grants. A few years ago, the Arts Commission made a policy objective and a goal to support the Thrive project, the Thrive program. And you see that based on the growth and the allocation to Thrive over these 4 years. And so in FY23, which was 4 cycles ago, general operating was at 94% of the budget and Thrive was at 6% of the budget. And you see the change here that in this current cycle and the previous one, we allocated 60% to operating and 40% to Thrive. So that's the first sort of decision that we make that then informs how many grants we're going to have in each category, what those grant amounts are going to be, and that is what I will show you next. So this is the distribution of the operating grantees. And so there were 79 applicants that received that score of 70 or higher that I showed before. And what I've done here is shown them based on the size category. So what I showed at the beginning around micro organizations, small all the way through large, based on the organization's revenue. And so you can see in the box in the top corner as well, I include the range of grant sizes in each category. So each dot that's shown on the screen represents a different organization, and the exact grant amount is calculated based on that budget amount. And so there's lots of things that we could say about this. One thing that I think is noteworthy to point out is that over the last couple of cycles, we have really focused on sort of closing or narrowing the gap between our largest grants and those in the smaller categories. And so you see that shown here where our largest grants that we had in this cycle were about $46,306 to our large organizations. And you see medium and mid-size organizations receiving similar size grants as well. So we believe that's been an important goal of ours in just bringing greater parity in what those grant sizes are. And so that's what I'll say about this chart, and then happy to answer questions as well at the end. But I will just move us along here. So those were our 79 operating grants. On the Thrive side, we had 86 Thrive projects that were approved for funding, and those ranged from $5,230 to $15,750. And so again, these are the specific amounts that were requested by the applicant for the projects that were proposed and based on the budgets that were submitted with the applications. So 79 operating, 86 Thrive grants are the outcomes from this cycle. And then this is just what it looks like when we think about our whole $3.2 million that we distributed. And so we had 40% that went to Thrive, and then you can see the different categories. So our micro organizations, small organizations, medium, mid-size, and through large there. And then I've got I think I've got 2 more slides, maybe 3 more slides, but I am almost done with my part. So that pie chart that I just showed is what we just did this year when we think about the distribution and how we spread it across our different categories. What this shows is the same categories, but over the last 5 years of funding. So we are in the 2026 cycle right now, shown on the far most right side. Oops. In the 2026 side, and in 2022, 5 years ago, you see that our grant budget was about $2.5 million. You see it move up in 2023 to the 3.2 million that we're in right now. And then in 2024, you see our total grant budget is much higher, right? It's almost at that $5 million. This was a year where there was a lot of advocacy to raise the Metro Arts Grants budget, and it was successful. And so the Metro Council provided a one-time boost in our grant budget, and it was one time and one time only. And you see our budget has been back at the $3.2 million for the last 2 cycles. And so this sort of shows what we have had to distribute over the last 5 years. You know, a conversation in every one of these meetings that we do is that it's never been enough, and how do we increase our amount of funding? But this shows what we have had and how we've distributed it over these 5 years to these different categories. And so, you know, some of the things that stand out here is how we have shifted in distributions to the categories. So you see the growth in Thrive, which is the yellow. I'm actually going to go to the next slide to show this. Okay, here we are. So what this slide shows is it's the same data, but it just shows it by percentages. So we're able to see how did we fund, you know, the organizations in the pink bar, that's our mid-size operating organizations, or in the purple bar, that's our medium-sized organizations. So the yellow at the top represents the growth in Thrive, which I've shown on other slides as well. It's the same data, so it looks similar. And you see a reduction in the orange and pink bars over those 5 years. Those are the total dollars to our large category organizations and mid-size category organizations. And again, that goes back to, sorry, I'm getting technical assistance here. That goes back to what I mentioned about, is there something wrong with it?
No, you're good.
Okay, that goes back to what I mentioned about bringing greater parity in the grant sizes between the different size of organizations, and really providing some increases to our smallest organizations. And so you see the growth in the purple categories here and the blue categories. So those are the growth in the small and medium organizations.
That's great.
And so I think here we are. This is the same slide that I showed at the beginning, but this is what I have walked us through here so far. So our policies, our processes that we use based on those policies, and the outcomes that it provided. And then I've just got sort of a wrap-up slide here, and then I'm going to turn the recording off, and then we can have some discussion. But what to expect next? So I'm not going to tell you a date or a super specific time frame of when we plan to open our next round of applications, but we are looking at late spring. And so our goal is to get as close as we can to grant approvals happening in July or August. That just gives the maximal amount of time in the grant period for organizations and for projects. And so you can expect applications sometime in the spring. An opportunity that we do have right now that I want to make a plug for is our Community Arts Leaders of Nashville program. This is an internship program that matches undergraduate college students for paid work experience with local arts organizations in Nashville. We've been doing this for a number of years, and it's always a very popular program. It provides for undergraduate students who are physically present here in Nashville Nashville area in the spring semester coming up in a Tennessee-based college are eligible to apply and are matched with arts organizations, and we provide funding for that for both the host organization, the arts organization, as well as the student to gain paid work experience. And they're also matched with a mentor, which is a arts administrator or professional artist that has been working in the arts ecosystem for 2 years or more. So we have our applications open for both of those opportunities right now, interns and mentors, with a November 3rd deadline. And so if you are connected to any college students or know somebody who might want to serve as a mentor role, please go to our website or Submittable to find more information about those opportunities. And then just stay engaged with Metro Arts. You all obviously already are, and so I probably don't need to tell you how to do that, but make sure you are on our email listserv or following us on social media. And of course, we have our monthly commission and committee meetings as well that are always open to the public, and you are welcome to join us in person or online for those meetings. I will say our committee meetings are no longer streamed on the Metro YouTube page due to capacity issues on the IT side. So we are only live streaming our commission meetings right now, but we're working on some ways that we can make sure our committee content is accessible to the public as well.